Yes, we're live. It's telling me my favorite part. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Happy Friday. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. I have an exciting, hope-filled conversation planned for tonight. Yay, my guest is here promptly at 6, so we will not uh, belabor the welcome. I'm gonna try to add her. No request. Yay, you sent a request. Hey, everybody. First off, I want you guys to, before I let her in, because it's gonna do that awkward pause thing. I would love for you guys to share this with a few people because I think it's a conversation that's it's going to be amazing. I'm not dramatic or anything, but it's really, really going to be a conversation for warriors and mommies and caregivers alike. So please go ahead and share. Please tell me. I need you guys to communicate. Talk back to me. All right. This is a dialogue, not only between Genesis and I, or my guest. You guys already know who it is, but I want it to be a conversation for everyone that is tuning in tonight. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. Share this with a person or two or 10. Let them know we're on. I'm going to accept Genesis requests. So we're going to get that awkward little connecting us thing. And then I'll be back. Where are you guys tuning in from? All right. That didn't work. Woohoo! Hey!
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. How are
Good,
you?
good, good. So happy to have you on. So happy that you're able to join.
Yeah, I'm happy
Um,
to be here.
you guys are not talking to me. We're not going to start until you start talking. No, for
Wow.
the sake of time, we will get going. But it'd be nice if you guys like talk back to us because I think that makes the conversation more interesting when people are actually engaged. So welcome everybody to our September. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've done one of these, since June. The community has grown quite a bit since June. It's been quite the journey, which I'll share another time why it's taken me so long. But September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and I thought this was a perfect time to bring this back. And I'm beyond honored and just humble at how God has chosen to use this space. And as I mentioned in my little promo video yesterday, I've been getting, so I've exchanged numbers with several moms. We've kind of became this community. And now the moms within this space have gotten the opportunity to connect with one another. So I'm super proud of that. Hoping to make it a more official group outside of here soon. But that's all things that I'll talk about throughout the month as I start to put things in place. But one of the things that I noticed over the last 3 months specifically, that I got the number one question that I would get or that I received as I was reading through the messages yesterday is about transplant or curative therapy. So I'm like, wait, I got something going here. You and I, so let me introduce myself and then I'll give a little spiel and then we'll talk about you. So for those that don't know, my name is Elsa. I created this space to give hope to others. The hope, I'm a mom of he's 8 now, he just turned 8, an 8-year-old son who has sickle cell SC. When we first got the diagnosis in 2015, I did not even know I carried the trait until I was pregnant with him. And when we got that diagnosis, I did not know anything about sickle cell, did not know not one single person with the condition. And there were there was a few years of hopelessness. And as he started growing and knowing that there was a need for me to learn more, not only for myself, but then the need for a community for both myself and him, I started looking, and there was nothing in my own backyard. And honestly, the Lord said to create it. You be the community that you desire. So I created this space hesitantly and not as obedient as I should, not expeditiously obedient as I should have, but in obedience to what the Lord had placed in my heart to share hope with other people going through the same thing. And so here we are. That's me. And today I'm super excited because Genesis is actually probably one of the first people through the awesomeness of social media. You were one of those first people that I found when I was comfortable sharing my story and just starting to find other warriors when SEO or search engine optimization finally became a thing where you can say warriors or sickle cell, and it started actually popping up. So I've been a big fan, as you know. I've been following your journey for at least minimum 3 years, if not longer. Because I think I reached out to you in my slow obedience. There were things that the Lord placed in my heart to do with this space. It was never supposed to be an Instagram page, but hey, we're starting places. And then, so I had reached out, and then life just kept happening, and I kept putting that project off and putting that project off. And then finally we connected at the Warriors Convention in July, and we're both like, we gotta connect, we gotta connect. And her wise grandma, Diane, one day said, can you guys stop saying that and just connect? But then we finally had the opportunity to sit down, and it was like, yeah, we're going to do this. And so when I planned on doing this, bringing back the live for September, I'm like, she has to be one of the first, or if not the first. So here we are. As I mentioned, one of the number one questions that I've been getting, that I usually get in terms of, again, I'm honored and humbled that God has entrusted me with this space, but that moms from around the world, so we're 19,000 followers from 21 countries and counting. So one of the number one questions that moms from around the world ask is about transplant. And you have an amazing journey and story. And I thought, hey, who better to answer these questions? And actually, most of the people that would be joining me have had some sort of journey with that. So I want to allow you to introduce yourself, and then we'll just kind of talk about childhood, your journey. Genesis is an amazing person, amazing, a warrior, an author, a beautiful daughter and granddaughter. But I'll let you tell us about who is Genesis. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Genesis Jones. I am 24 years old. I was born with Sickle Cell SS, and I am coming up on 3 years post-transplant this month, 9/11. I'll be celebrating 3 years, and then I will be coming up 2 years in November for the cancer. So I also just graduated with my degree in child development and psychology, and I will be starting to work with as a care coordinator, working with teens and adolescents for mental health support. So yeah,
nice.
That's a little bit about me.
All of my favorite areas. So then I've been following you for a little bit longer than that, because I think I started following you before transplant. I didn't realize it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
3 years.
Okay. And then you said a lot, mental health, psychology. So congratulations on your graduation. I know that was earlier this year. So woohoo, congrats.
Thank you.
What was your childhood like? What age were you diagnosed?
So my parents knew before I was born that I had sickle cell.
Oh, nice.
they did the test and they were like, your child will be born with sickle cell.
Were they
My
aware that they had the trait?
So no, my
Okay.
my parents did not know, and that's also when my grandmother found out that she had the trait.
Okay.
So yeah,
I
that's
gotta
when
have
they found
Diane on too. I didn't know she
yeah,
was a trait carrier.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I guess somebody has to, but I mean, it could have just came from your grandpa.
my
But
bad.
I did not know Diane was a trait carrier.
Yeah, she didn't know until my mom had me. So
Wow.
um, yes, yeah, and I had my first crisis at the age of 4, and mainly I was in the hospital for asthma. When I was growing up, I had my first. I would say I was in and out around the 3 to 5 for asthma, and then when I was 5 was when I was starting to have a lot of pain crisis around that age, and I had my first silent stroke at the age of 8. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
Do you remember
I
that?
do. I
What was
do.
that like for you?
Um, it was scary. Well, actually, let me take that back. So I remember them telling me I had a silent stroke because I didn't have any residual effects from it. I had my second silent stroke at the age of 10, and that's when I had actual like droopy face. I had things that you could actually see that I was having something going on for that second stroke. And that was scary for me because I had not actually had the side effects from that first stroke. So yes.
And for those who don't know, what is a silent stroke and what does that look like? I mean, obviously, like,
Yeah. So a silent stroke is when you have an infarct that comes across a scan in the brain, and it's something that where the oxygen is depleted in that area of the brain, and it leads an infarct there. For that second silent stroke at the age of 10, I had the weakness on the left side, and I had to go through therapy for about a month or two to gain that weakness. I still have slight weakness on the left side, but I had to really come back from that at the age of 10, and I remember being hospitalized for that. So yeah.
wow. Um, so were those, so you said your first crisis is at 4 and then
Mhm.
the stroke at 8. Were you the type of child that were you constantly in pain between that first crisis at 4 and the age of 8, or was your childhood fairly pain free?
No, I
Okay.
was still, in and out of the hospital due to pain. Um, I would just say those were like the major events that I would felt like were pivotal. I There wasn't moments where I was not like in and out of the hospital. I just remember still being consistently like going to children's or not, and like trying to manage school as well. So yeah, I there wasn't moments where I was not in the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where did your pain mainly manifest? I know for SJ, it's typically in his legs for the majority of the time. And in the last couple, well, he's had one or two on his arm, but for the most part, it's been his legs.
Yeah, excuse me. So I mainly had my pain in my back
Okay.
and my legs.
Okay.
Yes.
And as a kid, those school years, those early, it's almost like your pain started at those formidable years where you're starting school, making friends, and being a little bit more active because now you're verbal, you know what you like, what you don't like. What was that like for you? Was it difficult making friends considering, and did you miss a lot of days of school? And what's a lot?
Yeah, so it was hard make or keeping my friends. I do remember I had like my main friends that were considerate, and they I think they knew that I was in and out, but they didn't always know why,
Hmm.
because we were like 8 or 6 or 7. But, you know, when I came back, they were respectful and like they didn't really ask me a lot of questions. So I did have my friend groups. I think the hardest part was trying to keep up with the work.
Okay.
I do remember one year in fourth grade that I couldn't keep up, and I didn't even take like the school exam, like the task or the star
Yeah.
or whatever. I didn't take it that year because I was just so much out of school, and I didn't really have the framework to take that academic exam or test. And they just expelled it, or they didn't have me take it, and I just moved on to the fifth grade because of I had 504. So
Okay.
it was something that was exempt, and I didn't have to take it at that point.
Nice.
And that was something from the beginning that my grandma did have in place, because she was a school teacher, and I went to her elementary school. So a lot of people, some of the people did look out for me because of that. Like I was at the elementary school that she taught at, so
Nice.
that did help. But it was, just knowing the fact that I had to come back and revamp from what I did miss, or stay after sometimes.
So the good thing, it sounds like they didn't keep you back because you weren't able to keep up, and the 504 protected you in that sense.
Yes, it did.
Good. That's awesome. You mentioned something. I should have typed it, but oh, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Grand Prairie, so Grand Prairie,
Okay.
Texas.
So it's warm there.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what were your teen years like? Because the teen years, or those pre-adolescent years, that's when the body starts changing again, and menstrual cycles and those things. What were those years like for you? Did the pain change? Did it increase? What were those years like for you?
Yeah. Um, so when I was 8, um, that was, well, my grandma says it was when I was 10, which she's probably right. So when I was 10, I just had like a breaking point where my pain was so much that I told her that I can't do this anymore. Like I don't want to live anymore. So I went a really breakdown of my mental health, and I had to work through the pain and the mental aspect of it, and knowing that this is an everyday thing for me, and yeah, I don't want to maybe go through the pain, but I need to change my aspect of it, and how I need to cope with it. So my adolescent or my teen years was a lot of therapy and trying to cope through the pain that was no longer, well, it wasn't going away, but I had to figure out how to deal with it. So I went through, I was inpatient, I was outpatient, I was doing a lot of therapy to try to work through this. I felt like a burden of overwhelming pain that I just couldn't get rid of because I was just still in and out of the hospital.
Yeah.
So that was what my teens were. Yes, I was still having all these other hormones and transitions within my body, but I had a late, like I developed late. So I didn't really have those transitions until like late in my teens as well. So I didn't really have to deal with that until later, after I had actually developed coping skills as well, with the mental aspect that I was doing from the pain.
And while we're talking mental health, which I'm a super big proponent of, especially for this community, because one of the things that I realized early on, or that I still don't think is talked about often enough, is childhood trauma. Anytime you experience something that takes you out of the norm, whether it be, you see something, that you had an accident, and for warriors, you experience bone crushing pain over and over and over again. That's traumatic. What were some of your coping skills? Because that's pretty young to start learning, but so important to learn as warriors. But what were your coping skills what are some coping skills that you learned that you can share for a parent who has a child that's been through many of these crises that can help them?
Yeah. So one of my biggest things was trying to take myself out of my body, um, um, mentally and physically. So you might not be able to stop the pain, but you can maybe think about other aspects of things that help with the pain, whether it's, trying to think of a happy thought or think of your family. The medication only helps so much. So thinking of meditating or thinking of, what's your happy place, or who do you tend to gravitate to when you're in such a pain crisis. So I was always thinking about, maybe being at the beach, or thinking about being with my family, or things that, made me happy in the moment, because, I don't want to, potentially think about, oh, I'm in the hospital, or, oh, I can't be at school with my friends, or, I'm stuck here with all these IVs in me, and now I'm gonna have to be here another few days. So just really taking myself out of what is in the moment, and trying to maybe put in music and just take a few deep breaths, and really changing the environment around me and making it more of what is going to help me within that moment.
Nice. Now, do you do beaches? Because I know a beach can be a warrior's worst nightmare or
Yeah.
favorite place.
Right.
For my guy, it's his favorite place, but depending on where in the world we're at, it's a
It
no,
can,
no.
yeah.
Well, luckily, we've only had one issue at a beach actually, and that was here, but it wasn't the best time to be at the beach. That was like my fault. And that was the first time I realized, like, oh, beaches are no good for warriors. But
Mhm.
anytime we're outside the country, he loves the beaches. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's about the framework of, okay, is it warm enough, or is the water warm enough for me to even be in the water? Like, just thinking of, okay, the beach, I can be in the stand, I can be outside right now on this the sun, feeling the sun on me. Um, Keeping the framework of what can I do at the beach right now,
Mhm.
and not trying to put myself in a crisis that would potentially do more harm than good. It's not necessarily, maybe I can get in the water right now, but maybe I can feel the sun or the toes
Toes
within
in the
the
sand.
sand. And yes,
Sometimes
there's
that's all you need to just take me away, Calgon. You're probably too young to
exactly.
go, Calgon.
I definitely gotta go. No.
Um, so what type of treatments did you receive? Or, so, I mean, up until 2000, was it 17, 19, there weren't that many options available other than hydroxyurea. Tell me
Mhm.
what type of treatments you received, and was hydroxyurea one of them? And if so, what was your experience?
Yes, so I was, after when I was 8, they put me on the blood transfusions,
Okay.
and I did that every 4 to 5 weeks. Just regular transfusions, not the exchange or anything. So I did take SJ or Jade Newt to help with the iron overload. And then I did that for 8 years, and
Wow.
then yeah, till I was 16, and that's when they put me on the hydroxyurea.
Okay.
Um,
What was
and
that like for you?
I didn't have too many side effects from hydroxyurea. Maybe slight hair loss, but not like a huge effect. But I would say that I did really well on hydroxyurea. I had a huge high fetal hemoglobin, like 23.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, but I was still in a lot of pain. I didn't really get the benefit of taking hydroxyurea, even though my fetal hemoglobin was so high,
Okay.
uh, which was like mind boggling to me.
Did they ever
Uh,
explain why that was?
no, They didn't. They looked at other aspects, like trying to increase my pain meds or trying to do other stuff. So, they couldn't really tell me why that was. But yes, so I was doing that, and then at that point I was just over it because I was still in and out of the hospital. I couldn't really find relief for my pain. Like I said, they were looking at increasing my pain meds. I think I was doing oxycodone, I was doing hydromorphone, then they had started me on fentanyl. Like, I was just continuing to increase without any relief.
Wow.
And it just wasn't, I was like, okay, I need other options. And this is when, luckily, I met with somebody at my church with Be the Match. And that's how I kind of started my process.
Okay. You know what? Like, what a perfect transition, because guess what? That was the next question. So you were on hydroxyurea until the age of 16? Or you
No,
started at
that's
16?
when I started. Yes.
Okay. So, and then you said you met someone and you were on it for how long?
Until I stopped, until they told me to stop it when I went into my process with the transplant.
Okay. So that was gonna, at what age? So you mentioned that at 10-ish or so, you had already thought about not wanting to be here anymore. During all of those years from 10 to when you finally met this person at the church that gave you the option of Be the Match, had you thought about transplant? Did you know that that was an option?
Yes, I didn't know that that was an option because they told me when I was 8, after my silent stroke, that they had put me on the registry
Oh,
for
okay.
a unrelated donor. And every time I went for my transfusion, they told me that they were checking to see if I had a match. And at that time, I didn't know about the registry and the low diversity on the registry at that time. But I knew that they were checking. But that's all that I knew at that point.
Okay. So let's get into transplant. What a lot of the questions, this is where your story gets interesting. And when you asked, what are we going to talk about? How honest do you want me to be? I'm like, bring all the smoke. I need openness. I need candidness. I need us to have a conversation like we had at the conference. What's the initial process like? So obviously, because there's certain criteria that you have to have met before they even recommend you, which for you were you had a couple of silent strokes, and then you were having frequent blood transfusions, right?
Well, no, that's not a criteria.
So what were the criteria, but what was the criteria that put you on, or that allowed your team to recommend you?
Mm-hmm.
And then tell me what the process is like.
Okay. So the criteria is like you're correct, the silent strokes, and the main one is having how many hospitalizations you have had within 2 to 3 years of your
Okay.
transplant. And like I said, I was just in and out of the hospital so much. So I had definitely made that mark. And then also if you had any other like lung or kidney organ issues that were depleting your like overall quality of life. I did not have that, but the other two kind of made me like a good candidate overall. You just had to have 2 of the 3
Okay.
marks. So that's why I moved forward with the process.
Okay. So then once the person at your church recommended, they told you about Be the Match. And then what was that like? And how long from the time that you learned to when learned about Be the Match and started to obviously do your own research there and figuring out if you wanted to move forward to when you actually got the green light?
Yeah, so I met Cliff at my church, and he invited me to speak at an event that he was going to. And at this event, a guy from NIH heard my story. And this is when I was invited for the bone marrow screening. And that's when they told me that I had a perfect match between me and my mom.
Nice.
Now, between then and there, it was about a year before I started the pre-screening process for my actual transplant, and that was in January 5th, 2020. That whole pre-screening, pre-transplant process took about three months. You know, they do head-to-toe workup to make sure that you can actually go through the transplant process. Your eyes, ears, whole body, make sure that you're efficient to go through the process itself. And they also do your donor workup to make sure that your donor is okay. And my mom was my donor for my transplant. And then it was 2020. So in March, they told us that we had to go home due to COVID. So I had to go home for 5 months, going back in and out of the hospital due to the pain of the sickle cell and COVID. And then in
Catch
August,
COVID?
I didn't catch COVID, but
Thank
it
God.
was within the scope of COVID.
Okay.
But in August, that's when they called me back, and I was the first that they called back for the sickle cell protocol to start my transplant process again. And since I had already did everything, I didn't have to do anything but start my chemo and my countdown to receive my cells for day 0.
Nice. Now, do parents automatically get tested first? Why did they, or why did they, or how was your mom chosen? Was it just because they do everyone in your family first, or what was that like?
Yeah, so they did look at both me and my dad, or
Okay.
well, my mom and my dad. And my dad was not a good candidate because there was like a blood marker
Okay.
that would have made it a different, not as good of a match as it would have been with my mom.
Okay.
So they do test both parents for the trial that I was in. And the same for like if it's a sibling trial or like just depending on what trial it is.
Okay. So you were part of a clinical trial?
Yes.
Through the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, and Be the Match, correct?
No, Be the Match was not the trial that I was in. They just was like the vessel that helped me get the
Okay.
yeah.
So you never went through with the Be the Match, because that's, you had mentioned that's where your doctors had recommended you at first, correct?
That's just how the guy that from NIH was at that event, and he recommended me there.
Nice.
It was just like a
That's how God
vessel.
works.
Yeah, I know. It was
Wow.
really God. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, and then you mentioned after COVID, you came back and you started, or 5 months post-COVID, or actually it was still during COVID, you came back and the process starts with chemo. They kill all of so tell us about the chemo. What was that like for you? What did that do to you? Did you experience pain during that process still?
Yeah, so it's 21 days of oral and IV chemo. It's
Every day
mainly
for 21 days?
no.
Okay.
It's 21 days of mainly just oral chemo, and then 5 days you get the oral chemo before, and then 2 days you get your radiation before you get your cells. The whole process, you're still in pain because you have not received your cells, so you're still trying to make it to your day and still make sure that you're okay mentally and physically. I would say that's the hardest part, making sure that you're going to, get over the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
But they're trying to they're giving you all the medications and making sure that you're comfortable. You do have side effects from the chemo. There's one where you're like, it's called shake and bake, where you're literally shaking, and you get shakes and then you get hot. That's why they call it shake and bake. But they give you all all medications to help with the side effects from everything. And I think, mainly through that process, I was just sleeping and trying to really heal from the chemo that I was getting and not getting. So, yeah, it was a lot. And then you get to your day 0, and it's like a victorious day that you get to get your cells. So.
What was that day like? How long does it take?
So that day was amazing. I wasn't in too much pain that day. I just remember them coming out, and it took about maybe 2 hours for each bag, and I had 3 bags, so that's 6 hours. And it was nice. I didn't really do anything. I just slept and kind of took in the moment as they came in with every bag, every 2 hours.
So it's like
Um,
IV, correct?
yeah, it's just
Okay.
IV, like a blood transfusion or anything else. And it was just really, I told, before the first bag that I wish that I could just bottle up this moment for every warrior because, we truly deserve it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Um, the first time I heard you say that, I was like, that like brought tears to my eyes. To know that you were one step closer away from the pain and everything else that you had experienced for so many years. Um, After day 1, what was life like? What was that like? What were the days and months post the official transplant? Go as deep as you want.
Yeah, so after day 1, it was, you're still trying to get adjusted. I would say I grafted 2 weeks later from my mom's
And
cells,
what does
which they
that
said,
mean for those that don't know?
yes. So grafting means that you um you take on your donor cells. So that means that I officially took on my mom's donor cells, and I was officially making her cells that she donated to me. That means that after I killed off all my own cells, I was making her own cells that she donated to me. No longer the predominantly sickle cells. So yeah, that was 2 weeks later. They said that was right on time. My counts were slowly coming up. Everything was looking really good. So I thought, right?
Can I ask one quick question
Yes.
before you go into so you thought? What was the process of harvesting the cells from your mom like? In case,
Okay.
I told you, there's people that ask, so if they know they have that option, I don't want them to be like, oh my God, they're gonna cut me open. I know I've
Yeah.
heard the process, but like, what was that process like? Explain it for those who don't know, that thinks it's like this big scary thing. They're gonna put me on the operating
Oh my.
table. I was surprised.
No.
I was like, really? That's it? But go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not as scary as you guys think. So my mom explained it very simple. She said that, she went in for her physical. They lift her up, lift her head to toe as well, and she, checked out, and she went in. They hooked her up to a machine as well. It's just like donating blood. Her process took about 4 to 5 hours as well. But she just, was hooked up to a machine, just like donating blood as well. And before she donated blood, they did inject her with a shot that's called GVHD, and that helps, increase those donor cells. And that she got about 3 or 6 shots, and she said that that was not painful. They put it in your upper hip, and that just makes sure that they can give as much donor cells that me or the recipient needs. And she said that the side effects just felt like a cold or like a flu, but she didn't really have any to begin with or afterwards. And then after that, she got hooked up, and it was just like, donating blood. And that was it.
So no operating table,
No
just
operating
get hooked up to
table.
an IV, and
That
they
was
take
it.
your cells out and bag it up.
Yep.
And then, or so you thought.
Yes.
They gave it to you. 2 weeks later, you grafted. You thought everything was good. And so you thought.
Right. Yeah. So I grafted. Things were looking good. So I thought, and I started to have issues that were not looking too good. I was not keeping my food down. I was having stomach issues, and things just weren't adding up. So they started to test and looked at my blood to see what was going on. And one level was particularly high, and it was the EBV. And this was something that was dormant before the transplant, but now was not. And this is when they told me that I had post-transplant lymphoma disorder,
And
or
what's EBV?
EBV is it's it's a virus
Okay.
that the body that it usually lays dormant, but it can be turned back on if you are, I guess, have chemo, or if you have something that your body does to turn it back on, like radiation or chemo. And that's what I did.
Gotcha.
And because of that, I had high levels of it, and it didn't go down. And that's when they told me I had post-transplant lymphoma disorder, or cancer. And because of that, I had to go through 3 more rounds of chemo and 2 rounds of T cells to get rid of the cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Girl, you done been through it all.
Yes.
What was that process of going through cancer? When you first heard the word cancer, what were your thoughts?
Um,
How was your
I
heart? What were you feeling?
I was surprised. I was like, cancer? I'm trying to cure my sickle cell.
Yeah.
I was really shocked, and not ready for what was next, honestly. Yeah. And like literally, I was not ready, but I had to, take it as it was coming, and I had to prepare, because that was not something that I was expecting, but it was something that I had to handle. Yeah.
How long were you on chemo for the cancer?
Probably 6 to 8 months.
Okay. Wow. I didn't realize it was that long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you lose your hair and all of that all over again? It felt like the very beginning. Were you still going through pain at this point as well?
Yes. So I I was I did lose my hair twice. And then I started to there. So actually, I had a moment where I didn't have pain, and then I actually had to go. It recycled. So like I started to have pain again in the areas that the cancer was growing,
Wow.
or where it came up. So it's like I completely had a different diagnosis, like things were different, and like I was a cancer patient now. So yeah, it was different, and I had to come to the realization of that as well.
Mm. And then, what was life like post transplant and then post cancer?
Yeah, so
Quick
after,
question before. How long after, or so this has all been in the span of the last 3 years. So would you say, how long were,
so I was
no, go ahead.
I was
Go
at
ahead.
NIH for a whole year,
Oh,
trying to
you
get
stayed there
for
for
a
the
whole
entire.
year. Yes, I was there for a year, and then I came home, and they still monitored me very closely because of the cancer and everything. I was going back every month, but I was there for a year, um, and like I would just say now I've been just this last year I've been able to go just a year, because of things have settled down now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what has life been like post transplant?
You know, things are still unpredictable. Another BMT or post transplant patient has said it very well. And she said, you have essentially traded something else for something new. And I agree with her, because this year, post transplant me has had three unexpected things happen already. Yeah, and it's just been one thing after the other. This year I've had hemolytic anemia starting at the beginning in January, and
Mm.
that's when my counts dropped all the way to 5.0
Wow.
my hemoglobin, with no unexpected reason or cause. They just dropped, and they don't know why the hemolytic anemia happens, but it has happened to two other post transplant patients around the same time. The transplant timeline. Um, but I was just a lucky one to also experience that. So I had to go through another round of like chemo, to get rid of the hemolytic anemia the beginning of this year. Um, I've recovered from that, but also now, my counts are low, and my graft between my donor and me and I are low. So I don't know why they have dropped from 100% to 75%,
Mm.
and they're unsure of how or why to get them back up to 100%. So now I have a mixed chiasm where half of me and half of my mom are within the same body, same mesh.
Wow. So would that be considered the host versus graft? Is that or
Not quite.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, what does a cure mean to you? And when you say you've been through a transplant, does that mean you no longer experience a pain crisis at all?
Uh, so yes, I don't experience a pain crisis, um, because there's no sickle cells in my body, not a huge amount in sickle cells in my body to allow me to experience a pain crisis.
Okay.
They tell me that my hemoglobin S is 30% or less. So that means I have a sickle cell trait. But yes, yes. Um, However, a cure, I think that's a different question and a different statement, because I still have pain due to the damage that my body has had for having it for so long. And it's hard to redo that damage. So I'm still dealing with chronic pain and the damage from the sickle cell from over the 20 years. And I don't think that's a statement that I can say it's been a cure completely. There's still the damages from the stroke and the overall things that I've had to do to get to this point. Exactly.
So essentially, you don't have pain from, you don't have an actual crisis, but you're still living with pain due to the damages that's been done to your body because of previous pain. So what does pain look like now versus when you had sickle cells that were causing pain? Is it as intense? What is that like?
So it can get as intense, but not every day it's that intense. I would say that my pain is in the same areas that I've had my sickle cell, my back, my legs. Now it's actually in my arms as well, which surprisingly. But it's just now all over. It's a heavy weight. It's a different pain, and it's more consistent based on the amount of effort or daily activities that I do on a daily basis. So if I don't do as much and I rest my body like I should, I don't have as much pain. But if I continue to go because I have more energy and I can extend myself more, because I don't have the sickle cell disease, then I overdo it, and I can get to a point where I feel like I have a crisis, but it's not a crisis, if that makes sense.
And will that be a forever road, or is there hopes that as your years and years removed post-transplant, your body will somewhat start to, I mean, I guess if you have AVN in your hips and your hip is deteriorating, there's nothing that can happen there. But are there hopes that as your years and years post-transplant, that those pains start to lessen and things like that?
They're saying with time that it can get better.
Okay.
Because like I said, I'm just 3 years out post-transplant, and I've had a lot of chemo. I've had radiation. My body has been through so much, and they keep telling me
to go through so much.
Right, yes. So they say that only time will tell, but I'm hopeful that my pain will get better, and I just pray that I can get back to that point where I don't have pain. Like I felt it, and I just want to be able to get back to that point.
What's the longest you've been without any pain?
Maybe 4 to 5 hours.
Hours, just not. And then how frequently are you having pain versus before transplant?
Honestly, it's been more frequent, which I'm concerned. Like, I don't know if it has to do with my mixed chiasm now.
Okay.
They say it doesn't, but I don't know if they know.
You know your body.
Yeah.
You are the expert in Genesis, all things Genesis, including every aspect.
Yes. So they're saying that it will help too if I come. I know it will too, but it takes time to come off of the pain medications from being on them for so long.
Mm.
And that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I was gonna say
But
we need another live just to talk about that
yeah,
part,
yeah,
which
but
we will get to.
yes, yeah. But it's all with time, you know, trying to navigate what will really be the scope of getting to that stage of, you know, what deletes my pain from what is or what's not because of the scope of I've been through so much, like you said.
Yeah. So what else, if you don't mind me asking, have you been through? I know you mentioned the two strokes and the constant hospitalizations, and I know many people have had whether it's shoulder, hip, knee replacement, things of that sort. Have you had any kidney issues, blindness, and any ear issues, anything else that sickling has caused or did the sickling cause permanent damage anywhere else?
You know, I am blessed to be able to say that it didn't cause any other damage.
God.
Besides the normal like acute chest and stuff like that, I didn't have any other damage besides, you know, the things that I had with the stroke. So I am blessed to be able to say I don't have AVN or anything else. I did, when I went through my transplant, have blood clots.
Okay.
But you know, those can be fixed. But it's a blessing. I don't have any other issues. They're saying now that I do have fibromyalgia because I'm so hypersensitive after having pain for so long, and that they're saying that's just going to take time to not be so hypersensitive to just now having pain. So I just so sensitive to the aspect of pain now.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. So I see Sickle My Story, Miss Laurel. Oh my God. Can't come to the door. Sorry. It says the damage to your body cannot be reversed. You are so brave and very positive and a true warrior. Miss Laurel, she's a warrior herself. I'm like looking forward to interviewing her too, which is so true. And then I told you, you are the epitome of a warrior if I ever met one. I just got a couple of questions. I'm going to wrap it up because I want to tell you're more than just a warrior. And you do so much more in spite of everything that you go through. What do you wish you knew? What do you wish you knew then? What do you know now that you wish you knew before you went through the transplant?
I think they should have been more vocal about the protocol.
Okay.
You know, you do go through the protocol with the transplant team, and you're able to ask your questions. You're able to go over everything very transparently, even with your you know, your guardian or whoever you are with. But you know, they really highlight the aspect of.
Can you please keep it down? I'm on the live. Thank you.
They really highlight the aspect of, you know, this is what will happen, this is what most likely will happen, and then, you know, these don't really happen, you know.
Okay.
But that did happen to me.
So
So I think
I'm sorry. I got that slight distraction. You said you asked those questions and they said that it typically doesn't happen, but then it did happen? Did I hear that correctly?
yes, I think they brush off the stuff that might not really happen but has happened in the past type thing, or they don't perceive it to happen, if that makes sense, because they had to go back and change the protocol after it happened to me. So just really highlighting the things that may happen, and being vocal about every aspect of the protocol as it pertains.
So full transparency would have been nice.
Yes.
Mm. And then, what if you could go back? Would you do it again?
Yes, I would.
Every single aspect of it.
Yeah. People ask me that a lot because of everything that I've been through, right? But I would say that I still have changed my quality of life, even post transplant, because I'm not in and out of the hospital like I was, and I don't have sickle cell crisis anymore. And that's the huge reason why I went into having a transplant. Wanted to change my quality of life, and I was overwhelmed by having the sickle cell crisis.
Give me 1 second.
Mm.
Thanks. We're gonna go upstairs. It's a little noisy down there, so we're gonna come upstairs real quick. We're gonna finish this up here. All right, we're gonna wrap it up, but sorry,
No, you're
my
good.
apologies. That was unexpected, but hey, unexpected happens, and then you pivot. So through the process, you went and became a whole author, but I think you already had that in you. Tell me about Genesis, the author, and because your book, Rebirth, was birthed out of your, show the people the book. What brought you to, but I guess we know what brought you to write Rebirth, but what is Rebirth about?
Rebirth is about my sickle cell pain, or the pain that warriors go through as a warrior, and the transplant process that I experienced through poetic words.
And then you recently released another book, maybe?
Yes, I did.
And what's the
It's
name
called
of it?
Resilient,
Why resilient, I wonder?
because warriors are resilient.
That's right. They're both poetry books?
Yes, they are. And Resilient is about the mental health journey that, or battle that warriors go through, and it's not always highlighted within the whole aspect that we experience, or within the chronic illness community in general.
And another perfect segue. What has your mental health been like over the last 3 years? I know we first started the conversation. We talked about all of the wonderful coping skills that you learned at a very early age, which I'm sure you've carried on into adulthood. But what was the effects on your mental health through this whole process over the last 3 years?
Yeah, I would say that it's been up and down. Um, it's been hard to really sometimes articulate how difficult a transplant is. And it really helps to have your support group behind you when you feel as if you are about to fall within the not only the physical aspect but the mental aspect that a transplant really pushes you through, because they do evaluate you mentally when you go through a transplant, and there's somebody there, a therapist or a counselor, to be there throughout the whole process. But if you are not in this to truly do it for yourself, then you're gonna have a hard time being able to be there and be there for yourself to get up every day and fight for the new life that you want. So that was something that I had to be there. My grandma was my cheerleader because I did not want to fight every day. And it is a mental battle, as long with the physical battle.
And how's your heart?
Um, my heart is it's it's grown a lot through this process, because I think, you know, it's it's something that you you don't really know what is going to happen when you go through a trial. I started the process with people that are no longer here, and I really just try to live every day for those people and for the things that I continue to not only showcase but provide for the chronic illness community. Because, as warriors, we're fighting for our lives, but we're also fighting for those that are no longer here as well. So, my heart has grown a lot. I've grown, my passion has grown deeper for this community. And I truly believe that I'm here for a reason. And
Yes, you are.
I'm looking forward to continuing to share my story.
Nice. So you said you started the process with people that are here. So for those who don't know, the way that one of the very first people, you were amongst them, but the very first, it was important for me not only to find moms that were sharing their story, but to find a community of young warriors for SJ. And the very first person that I started following was this page called Sickle Cell and Me. I don't know if you know them or if you may remember that, if anyone here who's within the space know them, but his name was Titus, same age as SJ. He went through the process of a curative therapy in 2021. I want to say around Christmas. 7 days later, he didn't make it. That broke my heart. I was so invested in this little boy, the cutest thing. And I attended his funeral virtually. Everything was virtual at that point. And it was something, his dad did the eulogy. It was, and he read out of Romans 8:28, out of Romans 8. And Romans 8:28 has been my anchor scripture since I was 18. And there was something in there that he said, and I'm like, hope and affliction, that's the name. So that's how I got the name that's how I came up with the name for this page and the projects that the Lord had placed in my heart to work on. And you just mentioned that you started this process with people that are no longer here. Explain that. Like, were they going through the same thing, going through the transplant process?
Yeah. So I met some people that had already gone through the transplant, because we all stay in like a Ronald McDonald house,
Okay.
when we're at the inn. That's what it's called, the inn. And I had met some people that had already been through the process, or I met people that were going through the same protocol or trial as me, and we had all started maybe around the same date or time. And we were there to cheer each other on and also be there for each other. And some a person that I met beforehand, maybe he was no longer here due to other complications that he had due to sickle cell disease. Somebody, she had already received her transplant a few years back, and she came in for other complications, and those complications didn't work out, and she is no longer here. So just things that come up, and you're so unexpected due to just things that you're not expecting, from the transplant itself. And I think it's hard because you're living your life and you have already moved on for something that you think is done, or you're past it, and then something comes up, they're like, hey, your counts are down, or hey, this might not be what you think. And that's why I think something always in the back of my mind too, like, well, what's really going on too, because I've seen people that had already been past where I am, and they came in for something else and they're no longer here. So just things like that. But yeah.
And survivor's remorse is a real thing,
Yeah.
which another thing that's I feel is not often talked about, but I think the whole mental aspect of what warriors go through, that's not touched upon. What advice would you have? And I know I thought I saw her pop up. There's two moms on here that have, like, we've had in-depth conversations about this. What advice do you have for parents of young warriors who are contemplating going through a curative transplant, curative therapy, specifically a transplant such as yours, but their children don't have, are not old enough to make that decision for themselves, like you had, like you had a choice. Some of these kids are still very young, and like my son's age, and a little bit younger actually. So, and SJ's 8. So if I chose, I would, if I could. He doesn't qualify. But what advice do you have for parents of those young children who don't have the option yet, but they have to make that decision and live with that decision?
I would tell them, or I would suggest that now, I know it's hard to think of or not know that it's not something that your child can maybe say yes or no to. But from my experience, or from people that I have talked to that their child is young and they have gone through the process, or were going through the process, and I spoke to the parent, they were looking from the aspect of, well, I just want them to have a normal life, or I want them to live longer, or I don't want to see them in any more pain. So I think it's knowing that your child is going to live longer, or knowing that they're not going to be like me, dealing with these complications because they had the disease for so long, or knowing that the younger the better, because they don't have to deal with so many other complications.
I'm
Like
sorry,
kidney.
you froze for just a second. So if you can take back 30 seconds or 10 seconds.
Okay.
I
The
think you
younger,
said the earlier the better, but like you froze just as you were coming in.
yeah, yes, the younger the better, because they don't have to deal with other complications, such as the kidney, or young AVN. The older we get with the warrior, the quicker we age. So I really would just really think about the trial, or the options that your child has, and know that if I had the option to do it younger, I would have, because I wouldn't have to deal with the repercussions that I'm dealing with now. You won't have to wing off medications so much, like you won't have the other things that come with being on being growing old, or growing older with the chronic illness. I know it's hard to say or see your child go through something like that at such a young age, but if you look at the other side of it, they will grow older, they will have a longer life, and they will just be able to live a normal childhood after it.
And kids are resilient. They bounce
Yeah,
back
they are
faster
resilient.
than adults.
Exactly.
And I can't remember who said this at the conference, but it was like, and I don't remember what the question was, but it was something along the lines like, why would you want your child to go, or why do you want to go through a transplant? Because I have sickle cell. That's enough reason. I want to have healthy cells. I don't want my child to go through pain. Sickle cell is involved. That's enough reason, because that's a life of pain for many people. At some point, I love the people that have never experienced it, or their children have never experienced it, but for those that have, and when you see your child suffering, or for you yourself as you're suffering there, that's painful in and of itself. Like, to watch my baby just cry, and he had experienced the pain. It was only for a few hours, but for the first time recently, he said, "Why me? I hate this." And it was the first time I heard those words, I was like, oh my God, where do I sign up? Where? How? What can I sign up? What check do I need to write? I don't have $1 million to write a check for. But trust me, if I could, I would, and I will get it if I need it. But where do I sign up? Because I don't want him to live a life of pain, and a life knowing that there are all these other aspects of sickle cell that people just don't talk about, that the medical professionals don't even know themselves. So yeah, it's important because you have sickle cell. So you, in your opinion, as someone who's lived with all your wise 23 years?
24.
24, your wise full life of 24, to be 24 again, and going through everything that you've been through, that's something that you would still advise someone to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely.
I love you. You already know this. But I just need to say that because you are truly amazing. We're going to wrap it up at, it's a little bit past. I mean, and I know, yeah. So parting words. I like to leave, I like to end the lives asking you to give us some parting words, some words of hope. But do you want to read something? Is there like a particular
A poem?
page out of one of your books? Because you said they're both poetry books. Is there one that like would strike a nice chord with the audience?
Possibly.
And while you're looking,
yes.
I'm going to read through the comments and see. Kiara says, I'm in awe of your grace and spirit and the sacrifice you've made for the future. Amen to that. Amen to that. And the sacrifice for so many people, because you're going through it and sharing your journey so that those coming behind you, warriors and parents alike, can hear your story and be a little bit more prepared. Because like you said, there was a lack of full transparency and all of the things that the questions that you had that perhaps NIH didn't have a full list of answers at that time, but now they do, because I know you weren't quiet about it. So now they have to put those things in protocol. So I too am in awe, and thank you for giving your body for research.
Yeah.
Essentially, this is research.
Exactly. Yes. I do think I have a poem that is inspiring.
Go ahead.
All right.
If you don't mind. You don't have to if you don't want to.
No, I think it's a good one.
Okay. I'm listening.
It's called Cure. I never thought I imagined saying the word cure. This was never in my vocabulary. A thought I tried to block because of the pain. Knowing that it is not possible, years and years, pain and tears later, there are groundbreaking trials, daring to use the word I never begin to speak of, something only a few people have the opportunity to participate in. I have been given golden ticket, finding a perfect match closer than I would have thought to look. The one person that gave me life is now going to be able to help change it. Jumping into new research to come out reborn and pain-free. Days will look different, yet feel better. Energy will last longer, while time may never feel like it's running out. For the endless possibilities that are in store, all because of a cure from sickle cell disease.
That's what they do in poetry slams, right?
Yes, it's not.
I'm so corny, but that's okay. Now, as if that was not hopeful enough, what do you want to leave the people with?
Just that, you yourself are warriors, and you know your body yourself. So if you're looking for a curative therapy, a way to changing your quality of life, just know if it's right for you and know how to go the right avenues and make sure that it's right for you, because there are many ways to manage a chronic illness or sickle cell disease, and just make sure that it is going to be the right fit, because originally I thought I was going to go with gene therapy, but that was not the right fit for me. And that's why I went with bone marrow transplant for the optimal results that I have received to this day. So always make sure you're doing the best thing for you. Make sure you have a support team and keep your mental health intact, and remember to take care of yourself at all times.
Amen. Amen. Do you have time for a question? I see Empress Jersey, Miss Kamisha here. She said, what was your experience like if people did not believe you as a child that you were not in pain because you were still doing basic stuff like walking? Did you have that experience when people just didn't believe you if you weren't believe that you were not in pain, or thought that you were not in pain when you in fact were, just because you were normal or looked normal? Yeah. And I use air quote for normal.
Actually, my dad didn't believe me when I was in pain growing up. He would tell me to just lay down or brush it off, and he didn't really believe me when I said I was in crisis when I went over to his house and stuff. That's why I didn't like going to his house. But I would usually call my grandma, or try to be proactive in ways that would make sure that I was still taking care of myself, and advocate in other ways, because I mean, if the adult or the guardian doesn't believe you and that's the only person that's there, then what are you gonna do, So it's a hard spot, especially at school too. I think it's knowing who to tell and how to really be an advocate for yourself at such a young age. There was times where people didn't believe me, and then I was really in a bad crisis, and they're like, oh, something is going on. So I really hope that it doesn't get to that point, but I think it's really just knowing how to voice your opinion, let people know that you do have something more than like a chronic illness, and maybe potentially having something like an ID or something that states that you have a chronic illness or sickle cell disease, so that you the people won't like dismiss you.
Awesome. I don't think there are any more questions, but we won't hold you any longer. I know you gotta go.
Yes.
Thank you, babe. I appreciate you. We're gonna come back for part 2, because we're gonna talk about the drugs, all of the good stuff. You're stuck with me for forever now. So we're gonna come back for several parts, but we're definitely gonna come back for part two. I thank you for your time. Okay, no, she said thank you. And for moms that you know what, I'll let you go. I'll say thank you, and then I'll give a word to the moms that are on here.
And they
So thank you for your
can reach
time.
out to me if they want any
So
other
that
questions.
was.
Yeah.
You keep reading my mind. Perfect segue. Where can the people find you?
Yes. I'm on it should be here, but I'm Genesis SCD_warrior, and you can follow me and reach out with any other questions if you have any.
And I'm going to save the replay, because there are several people, because it's kind of in different countries. Obviously, not everyone's able to join because it's different times. So I did get a lot of messages saying to make sure I save it because they're interested in hearing more. So I will definitely save it. I will put your contact. You said your Genesis SCD on all platforms. I know here on IG, that's your name.
Yes.
And I obviously love long form content. So I'm trying to find a way to get this. There's a YouTube channel coming. So I'm going to find a way to get this. There's a lot of learning curves. And then we're going to talk about the other projects that we discussed in Texas. But I thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you. Get some rest, and catch you in the text.
All right.
Bye, babe. Have a good night.
Okay.
So thank you. And everyone's saying thank you so much. So I hope you guys were able to catch all of it. When I tell you, she is such an amazing young lady. She has been such a huge source of inspiration and hope for me. I hope that you guys got something out of it. I read your messages. July, August were a little crazy for me. If I have not been in touch, I was working through some stuff, okay, but I'm back. I hope that you guys got, again, a great deal of source of inspiration. I will be talking to a few more warriors that have been through the process, different types of curative therapy. I do have one guy, and I do have males and female. So I do plan on speaking to someone who's had the gene therapy. We're still working on dates. So I want you guys to stay tuned. And for any mom, Joy, same. We got to connect. I miss you. You actually on my mind yesterday. But yeah, and for any parent out there, so I've been putting together some resources. I do have some things in the work. I've been dragging my heel, but no more, because now it's time to really go all out. But if you're in need, I know notifying the schools of what is going on with your child, especially if it's your child's first year in a new school. If you need, created a template the other day for myself and another amazing mom. I'm hoping to have you guys all on at some point, because we need to share these stories. It's so important to share, because in sharing, you provide hope to somebody else. I'm a firm believer that, look, I wouldn't have picked sickle cell to save my life, but I believe that the Lord allowed it to touch my life because he knew that I would do something with it, that I would be vocal about how despicable this condition is and how warriors are treated. So I think it's important. I know some people are not, trust me, I don't like the whole being in front of a camera thing, but once you do it once, you're like, oh, okay. But then again, when it's God telling you to go, what are you going to be like? No, I'm not going. Trust me, I've been saying no for a long time, and it hasn't worked out well for me. So the point is, I hope that have some conversations with all of you guys so you can share your stories. But if you're in need of a letter or a template to send to schools, or just to inform the teachers of what's going on, I've created one. DM me or leave in the comments letter, and I will send it to you. Until then, stay tuned because we have a jam-packed schedule next week. We will be going live almost every Friday for the next week, but then in the next couple of weeks, I have to look at the schedule before I tell you guys all the dates, but it's a busy month of lives. Again, so warriors, allies, we're going to talk sickle cell trait, why it's important to know sickle cell trait. We're going to be talking about reproductive health, how sickle cell affects it, how going through a curative therapy affects your reproductive health, what you should know, and all of those things. So yeah, I'm gonna sign off. We've been on an hour and a half. So please stay tuned. I'm gonna put out a schedule. I don't know that I'm gonna disclose all of the names just yet. And plus, life is unpredictable for warriors. Sometimes, you know, they could wake up today at any point and be in pain and we have to pivot. So I try to hold on to the names as close to when the time is coming as possible, just to give the respect. And I don't want anybody to be like, oh, I was expecting it to be this person, or it's not. So that's that. But stay tuned. Keep an eye on the page. If you missed the beginning, catch the replay. If not, I thank you. Thank you for sticking around. But I thought it was an amazing conversation, and I hope to have more of these. And I hope you are filled with hope. That's what we're about here. We're providing hope in affliction. All right? Y'all be good. I'm going to go eat dinner. I'm hungry. Good night, everyone.